The twin suns of Kepler 186f had not yet cleared the jagged horizon, but the heat was already a living thing. It breathed out of the rust-colored rock, a dry, patient exhalation that had been killing soft things for 3 billion years. For Kalen, the Hare of the title was not a rabbit in the way Earth children imagined. He was a Lepidian, a genetically re-engineered descendant of the European hare, uplifted to sentience and then abandoned on this penal colony world 2 generations ago. His fur was the color of dried blood. His eyes were wide and dark as polished obsidian, and his hind legs were corded with muscle that could propel him across the scree fields at 60 kilometers an hour. But speed was not enough here. Not in the Razorback maze. The maze was a natural formation, a 20-square-kilometer labyrinth of obsidian shards, basalt pillars, and serpentine canyons that had been carved by ancient flash floods. The walls were sharp enough to shave skin from bone, and the floor was a carpet of broken glass stone that clicked and whispered with every step. Kaelin's ears, which could swivel independently and hear a burrowing worm 100 meters away, were laid flat against his skull. He was not hunting. He was being hunted. 3 hours ago, a seismic thump had echoed through the canyons. It wasn't a tremor. It was a lander. The Dominions, the human empire that had forgotten this prison world, had sent a new shipment. But this time, they hadn't sent prisoners. They had sent a Harrier. The Harrier was not a machine in the traditional sense. It was a bio-droid, a synthetic organism woven from carbon nanotube muscle and a neural core that housed the predatory instincts of a dozen extinct Terran apex predators. Its official designation was Unit 734X, but the Lepidians who had survived its previous visits called it the Needle. Because when it moved, it was thin, vast, and silent, and all you ever saw was the flash of its killing appendage. Kalen had been grazing on bioluminescent fungus in a side cavern when the Needle's presence flooded his senses. He didn't see it. He felt it. A sudden, profound silence where insectoid chittering should have been. A shift in the wind that carried the cold, sterile scent of manufactured ozone and iron. His lateral line, a remnant of the amphibian DNA spliced into his ancestors, vibrated with the low-frequency hum of the Harrier's power core. It was 500 meters away. Then 400. Then 3. He ran. That was 30 seconds ago. Now, Kalen found himself at the bottom of a cul-de-sac canyon, a dead end where the walls climbed 40 meters high and curved inward like the petals of a closing stone flower. His chest heaved. A thin line of blood trickled from a gash on his left thigh, where a shard of obsidian had nicked him during a desperate slide through a narrow chimney. He could taste his own fear, a metallic, electric flavor on his tongue that he knew the Harrier could taste too, carried on the molecules of his own sweat. He had exactly 5 minutes. Not because the Harrier would take that long to find him, but because in 5 minutes, the solar radiation from the twin suns would reach its lethal zenith, and the maze would become an oven. Any creature caught in the open without shelter would have its cells denatured in seconds. The Harrier, with its ceramic-reinforced dermal plating, could withstand the heat for an hour. Kalen had maybe 10 minutes of survival before his brain cooked. He needed to escape the maze entirely and reach the subterranean warrens of his clan. But the only exit was on the far side, 2 kilometers through the most dangerous terrain on the planet. And the Needle was already behind him. He pressed his back against the cool shade of the canyon wall, forcing his breathing into a rhythm his grandmother had taught him. Slow, deep, betray nothing. His ears rose, turning like radar dishes. To the west, a trickle of water dripped down a stalactite. To the east, the sound of his own heartbeat. To the south, the direction he had come. There was nothing. An absence of sound so complete it was a sound in itself. The Harrier was there. It had stopped moving. It was listening too. Middle. Kalen made a decision that would have killed a lesser hare. He stopped running. Running was what the Harrier expected. Prey ran. Prey panicked, scrambled, and made noise. The Harrier's logic core was built on a binary understanding: pursuit and capture. It could calculate trajectories, predict evasive maneuvers, and anticipate fleeing routes with 99.7% accuracy. What it could not do was comprehend stillness as a tactical weapon. Kalen closed his eyes and visualized the maze. He had been born here. He had drawn maps in the dust with his claw since he was a leveret. The cul-de-sac he was trapped in was called the Grinder by the elders, not because of the rocks, but because of the way the heat funneled through it at noon. The walls were so smooth that nothing could climb them. The floor was so narrow that a single Harrier could block the entrance and wait. It would wait. It had infinite patience. But the Grinder had a secret. 3 meters above Kalen's head, partially hidden behind a fold in the obsidian, was a vent, a geothermal fissure no wider than his shoulders that led into a network of steam tunnels carved by ancient volcanic activity. The elders said the tunnels were cursed, filled with toxic gas and blind, pale predators that had never seen the sun. But Kalen also knew that the main branch of those tunnels connected to the Warrens. If he could reach the vent, squeeze inside, and navigate the darkness for 200 meters, he could emerge on the other side of the Needle's position. There was one problem. The vent was 30 meters above the canyon floor on the far wall. He couldn't jump that high, but he could use the Harrier. He took a single, deliberate step away from the wall and scraped his claw against a loose shard of rock. The sound was a sharp click that echoed through the canyon like a gunshot. He did it again. Then he turned his back to the canyon entrance and began to tremble, not from fear, but from the deliberate shaking of his leg muscles. He was making himself look wounded, look vulnerable, look like easy prey. The sound of the Harrier's approach was a whisper, a displacement of air, a soft shush of its polymer feet on the scree. It appeared at the mouth of the cul-de-sac, and Kalen finally saw it with his own eyes. It was beautiful in the way a surgical scalpel is beautiful. 1.5 meters long, low to the ground. Its body was a seamless curve of matte black ceramic. It had no eyes, no face, only a sensory array of pits and lenses that glowed with a faint red light. From its shoulder blades extended 4 articulated limbs, each ending in a tri-claw that could pierce steel. And from its spine, coiled like a serpent, was the needle, a hollow, diamond-tipped proboscis that could inject a neurotoxin that liquefied internal organs in under 3 seconds. The Harrier paused at the entrance. Its sensory pits flared. It was analyzing the tremors, the blood scent, the heat signature of the trembling hair against the wall. Its logic core ran the calculation. Prey is cornered. Prey is injured. No escape vector. Execute terminal approach. It began to move forward, slowly, savoring the hunt. Kalen's entire body screamed at him to run. The primal hindbrains, the ancient rabbit instinct that had kept his ancestors alive for 50 million years, was flooding his system with pure terror. But he had been uplifted. He had human-coded logic buried beneath his fur. He overrode the panic and waited. The Harrier came closer. 10 meters. 5. 3. The needle began to uncoil, rising like a cobra preparing to strike. Now, Kalen leaped, not away from the Harriers, but straight toward it. He exploded off his hind legs with every gram of force his muscles could generate, spinning in midair so that his powerful feet connected with the top of the Harrier's sensory array. The impact was like kicking a concrete pillar. A shockwave of pain shot up his legs, but he used the momentum to launch himself sideways, ricocheting off the canyon wall and then upward. The Harrier, confused by the prey moving toward danger, hesitated for 1/10 of a second. Its strike reflex fired a half-second too late. The needle shot forward, but Kalen was already 20 meters in the air, sailing toward the hidden vent. He didn't make it. His claws scraped the lip of the fissure a meter short, and he began to fall. Below him, the Harrier was already recalibrating, its limbs coiling to leap. Kalen did the only thing he could. He kicked off nothing but air, twisting his body into a corkscrew. and slapped his paw against a tiny outcrop of rock. The hold was fragile, ancient pumice that crumbled under his weight, but it slowed him enough to reach up with his other paw and catch the edge of the vent. His claws dug into the soft volcanic rock, and he pulled. The Harrier leaped. The needle extended, and Kalen hauled himself into the darkness just as the point sliced through the space his spine had occupied a heartbeat earlier. He was inside the vent. He scrambled forward on his belly, scraping fur and skin against razor-sharp obsidian shards embedded in the tunnel walls. Behind him, he heard the horrific sound of the Harrier trying to follow. Its body was too wide. Its ceramic carapace scraped and ground against the rock, sending sparks into the darkness. It couldn't fit, but it didn't need to. Kalen heard a low hiss, and then a cloud of vaporized neurotoxin began to billow into the vent, pushed by the Harrier's internal fans. He had maybe 30 seconds before the gas reached him. He crawled faster. The tunnel sloped downward, and the air grew hot and wet. The toxic plume was gaining. He could feel it now, a tingling numbness in his hind paws. The elders had been right about the gas, but they had also been wrong. The tunnel wasn't cursed. It was alive. Ending. The blind predator struck without warning. It was a cave serpent, a legless, 6-meter-long reptile whose ancestors had adapted to the geothermal vents a million years ago. It had no eyes, but its skin was covered in heat-sensitive pits that painted the world in infrared. To the serpent, Kalen was a brilliant star of body heat rushing through its territory. It struck from a side tunnel, its jaws gaping wide to reveal rows of needle-thin teeth. Kalen saw it coming not with his eyes, he was blind in the absolute dark, but with his lateral line. The displacement of air, the rush of cooler moisture from the serpent's open mouth, the subtle vibration of its scales against the rock. He did the only thing he could. He dropped flat and let the serpent sail over him. Its body slammed into the tunnel wall, and the impact triggered a small rock slide. Kalen scrambled over the thrashing tail and kept moving. But the serpent was fast, faster than the Harrier in this tight space. It coiled and came again. This time, Kalen jumped onto its back, using it as a bridge to reach a narrow chimney that led upward. The serpent whipped its head around, and its teeth raked across his flank, opening 4 long gashes. Kalen screamed a high, thin sound of pure agony, but he didn't stop. He climbed. The chimney was barely wide enough for his body, and the rock was slick with condensed steam. He used his claws like ice axes, pulling himself up inch by inch. Behind him, the serpent gave chase, but its body was too thick for the chimney. It wedged itself, thrashing and hissing, as Kalen emerged into a wider cavern. The cavern was the main geothermal artery. A river of boiling water ran through its center, emitting a sulfurous fog that burned his lungs. And on the far side, 40 meters away, he saw the red glow of emergency lighting. The Warrens, his clan's tunnels. He was almost there, but the Harrier had not given up. He heard it before he saw it. The crunch of its feet on the cavern floor. The needles had found another way around a parallel tunnel that connected to the main artery. It emerged from the fog like a demon, its sensory pits locked onto his heat signature. It had a new strategy. It was herding him toward the boiling river. Kalen was out of time. The twin suns were fully above the horizon now, and even deep underground. He could feel the temperature rising. His wounds were bleeding freely. His vision was blurry from blood loss and neurotoxin exposure. He had one card left to play, and it was the most dangerous one. He ran straight for the river. The Harrier accelerated, its limbs pistoning so fast they became a blur. It was going to reach him before he reached the water. Kalen waited until the last possible second, until he could feel the cold wind of the needle's passage on his back, and then he juked left. The Harrier, committed to its trajectory, could not turn as quickly. It plunged into the boiling river. The water was close to 100 degrees Celsius. The Harrier's ceramic plating could handle heat, but not sudden immersion while moving at full speed. The thermal shock cracked its carapace, Boiling water flooded its neural core. The red lights in its sensory pits flickered, screamed, and died. The Harrier sank beneath the surface, its limbs twitching in final, robotic convulsions. Kalen collapsed on the riverbank. He lay there for a long moment, feeling the warmth of the stone against his wounds, listening to the hiss of the steam. Then, with a strength he didn't know he had, he pushed himself to his feet and limped across the final stretch of rock toward the red glow. The Warren's airlock opened, and his clan mates gray-furred, wide-eyed Lepidians rushed out to meet him. They carried him inside, past the fungal gardens and the sleeping chambers, to the healing pools. Later, as they dressed his wounds and fed him nutrient paste, the clan elder asked him how he had survived. Kalen looked up at the smooth stone ceiling of the warren, then back at the tunnel where the river still boiled. He thought about the 5 minutes that had felt like 5 lifetimes. The blind leap, the serpent's teeth, the Harrier's final plunge. He touched the gash on his flank and smiled, whiskers twitching. "I stopped being prey," he said, "and I remembered that the maze has killed things a lot older and meaner than me." Outside, the twin suns blazed down on the Razorback maze. The Needle's remains would be found by scavengers by nightfall. And Kalen's, the hare who had turned a death trap into a hunting ground, fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. But his ears never stopped turning, and his heart never stopped counting. Because in the maze, survival wasn't an ending. It was just the beginning of the next 5 minutes.